Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into a real game-changer of a review paper from Timothy Suchomel and his team. If you're a coach who's serious about athletic performance, this paper is an absolute goldmine. So let's break down the big takeaways you can use in the weight room tomorrow.
All right, let's kick things off with the absolute core idea of this whole paper. This quote says it all. What they're really getting at is that maximal strength, it isn't the end goal. Think of it like the engine in a car. It's the vehicle that drives everything else. Sprinting, jumping, you name it. The bigger and more powerful the engine you build, the higher the potential for speed and explosive power on the field.
So if we're going to build a bigger engine, right, we've got to know how it works under the hood. The paper gives us a really clean blueprint for how the body actually produces force and, gets stronger over time. The researchers basically sort all strength adaptations into two main buckets. On one hand, you have your morphological factors. These are the physical changes, the hardware, you could say. We're talking bigger muscles, changes in how the fibers are arranged, and stiffer tendons. Then on the other hand, you have the neural factors. This is all about the nervous system getting way better at using the muscle it's already got.
And this is where it gets really fascinating, because so much of getting stronger is actually about upgrading the software, not just the hardware. A huge chunk of your athlete's progress, especially early on, comes from their brain just learning to do its job better, recruiting more muscle fibers, making them fire faster and all together, and learning to turn down those internal safety brakes that limit force.
Okay, so we've got the how. Now let's talk about the when. How do we actually lay this out over a season to get the best results? The paper really champions a specific, more modern way of thinking about programming.
And that approach is block periodization. Now, instead of trying to improve everything all at once, which, let's be honest, we've all tried, BP says, let's focus. Let's take a concentrated block of time to get really good at one or two things that work well together. The authors argue this is just a much better way to manage fatigue and nail those performance peaks with today's athletes.
And this is why it's so smart. It's not a one-size-fits-all deal. For your sprinter or thrower, a single-target block where you just hammer maximal strength could be perfect. But for your basketball or soccer player, a multi-target block where you're developing strength and power at the same time just makes way more sense. The key is you're not pairing it with something that's going to kill your gains, like tons of endurance work.
So we've got the science, and we've got our long-term strategy. Now for the fun part. What actual tools, what exercises and methods are we putting into that program to really get the job done?
The researchers sifted through all the evidence to see what really moves the needle. What are the heavy hitters when it comes to building well-rounded athletic strength?
First up, and probably no surprise here, is bilateral training. We're talking your big rock lifts, squats, deadlifts, presses. Because you're using both limbs, you've got this incredibly stable base. And that stability is the key. It gives an athlete the platform they need to express maximum force and create that massive overload that drives strength gains.
Next on the list is eccentric training, and they put a huge emphasis on accentuated eccentric loading, or AEL. This is where you're handling more weight on the way down than you lift on the way up. The paper points to this as this incredibly potent stimulus that hits everything: the muscles, the tendons, and the nervous system. It's a triple whammy.
And finally, we have variable resistance training, using bands and chains. You know that spot in a squat or a bench press where everything just grinds to a halt, the sticking point? VRT is the answer. It lets us match the resistance to where the athlete is strongest, so we can overload the entire lift, not just the weakest part.
Okay, so let's put it all together. This table right here is basically your cheat sheet. It gives us a clear hierarchy of tools. Look at how eccentric and variable resistance just dominate for building size and strength. But then, when our focus shifts to power, that's when things like the Olympic lift variations and plyometrics really start to shine. It helps us pick the right tool for the right job at the right time.
All right, we've covered the strategy and the best tools for the job. But we all know that great coaching lives in the details. So the paper digs into some of those common arguments we all have and gives us some solid, evidence-based answers.
Let's start with a big one, the one that gets debated to death online and in every weight room. To get our athletes as strong as humanly possible, do we need to be taking every single set to absolute can't-move-the-bar failure?
The research couldn't be clearer. Nope, not only is it not necessary, it can actually hurt their progress in the long run.
And the reasoning is just rock solid. Training to failure doesn't give you better strength gains, but it does create a boatload of fatigue. That fatigue tanks the quality of your next sets, which means less total quality volume. Plus, you can recruit all those high-threshold motor units just by lifting a heavy weight with the intent to move it fast. No need to grind yourself into dust.
And how about rest periods? Well, for max strength and power, the evidence is pretty overwhelming. Longer is better. Taking a good 2 to 5 minutes between your heavy sets lets the nervous system and your energy stores fully recharge. That means you can maintain high-quality reps and lift heavier across all your sets, not just the first one.
Finally, and this is maybe the most important part, the paper brings all this science back to where it matters, the art of coaching. How do we take these principles and apply them to the actual unique athlete standing right in front of us? The guidance here is super clear and logical. For your younger, weaker, less skilled athletes, the mission is simple. Build the engine. Get them strong, period. Don't overcomplicate it. But for your veterans, the ones who are already monsters in the weight room, the game has to change. The focus needs to shift from building more strength to learning how to use that strength quickly, focusing on power and rate of force development.
And they even give us a really practical benchmark to work with. Now, it's not some magic number, but the research suggests that once an athlete can back squat over 2 times their body weight, that's a pretty good signal that you can start dedicating more of your training time to power development. They've built a big enough engine, now it's time to add the turbocharger.
So here's the bottom line, the big takeaway from this whole review. As coaches, our job isn't just to make athletes strong. It's to understand when to build that raw strength and then, more importantly, when and how to translate it into the explosive, game-winning performance that matters on the field. Building the engine, well, that's the science. Teaching your athlete how to drive it, that's the art.